What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Sacred Sunday to each and every one of you. I want to acknowledge all of our friends that are in the Zoom room with us. I want to acknowledge those of you that are watching on Facebook or on one of our YouTube channels. And I want to even acknowledge those that are watching the recording. Our statistics show that a lot of people end up watching the recording. So whenever you're watching, welcome. It's good to have you with us. I am Love Coach Scott Katamas. I'm your host. And today we've got a beautiful conversation that's going to take place. Two wonderful women that I really respect and looking forward to conversing with. We have Star Kamala, you've seen her on the show before, and a new friend, Beth Bell. And we are going to be talking about angels and aliens and altered states and all sorts of wonderful things about raising consciousness as we are part of this awakening world. And we do have our beautiful beloved brother, Omashar, who's going to be providing a couple of musical offerings for us. So we're really excited about that. Before we get started, though, before we go all the way into what we're going to be doing, I do want to invite those of you that are watching on YouTube or Facebook to join the Global Peace Tribe. It's a wonderful group of people. We do 3 or 4 online shows every week. We participate in retreats and conferences. And it really is a way to get to know the amazing beings that are your brothers and sisters in awakening. And it's really easy to join. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com. That's where you can kind of learn all about who we are and what we do. But right away, click register for the new season. And when you do that, of course, it'll take you to our registration page. As I said, we do 3 or 4 shows every week with all sorts of amazing, beautiful guests, similar to the ones you're going to see tonight. For example, on Wednesday night, we did a show all about contacting and connecting higher intelligence with an amazing pair, Zenka Caro and Stephen Altair. And I've been doing, they have been leading these all-night journeys online. And then tonight, Zenka is leading a spoon bending party here in Sedona, which I'm going to go to. So it's kind of fun. That was last night's show. And I know a lot of our people in the Zoom room were there last night. It was a beautiful show with a lot of wonderful music and presenters. And then here's today's show, all about angels, aliens, and altered states. So the advantages to registering and joining us is that way you can come right into the Zoom room and interact with us. We also put out a lot of links, and that way you get the links more easily. You also get to meet Jasmine Bear. Thank you. Are you getting kisses? Okay, thank you. So it's actually great to join us. And when you register today, you will get links to all of our shows for 4 months, all the way through the end of June. Plus, you get an email with the replays, the recordings. Because as I said, a lot of people, if they can't join us, like to watch the recordings. All right, so there you have it. We're going to start with an opening meditation, and today I'm going to encourage us to do some light touch. Light touch has been a big part of the Global Peace Tribe offerings created by Jay Mayer, and it's essentially just awakening our senses. Like my light touch partner is Jasmine Bear, my dog, and right now she loves to lick my fingers, so that's kind of a wonderful way. So those of you that are with each other, like Reverend Jeffrey and Sonia, you can touch each other if you wish. Or of course, most of us are by ourselves and you just touch yourself. Some people like to use a feather. So as I'm leading us through this brief meditation, that'll be followed by music with Omasar, I encourage you, if you're in the mood, to do some light touch. Because what we want to do is slow down and start paying attention to our breath. Just let my voice gently guide you. Breathing at your own pace. And on every breath, I invite you to go deeper and deeper into your own universe of you. And however you choose to maybe lightly touch yourself, maybe even notice, are there any parts of your body, places where maybe there's some discomfort? And if so, that's a wonderful place to touch yourself, to send some love. Always starting by loving ourselves, blessing ourselves, remembering that self-love is not selfish. The more we love ourselves, the more we fill our cup, the more we have to give to others. And so, acknowledging whatever emotions you may have already felt this morning, acknowledging our beautiful body temple. And then we offer blessings. We offer blessings for our friends, our loved ones, certain one that you know that's really needing extra love, extra care. We really like to use the wonderful prayer from Paramahansa Yogananda of maximum grace. So if there's someone in your world that's going through an especially difficult time, maximum grace for Emily, maximum grace for Bindi, maximum grace for whoever it is that might be going through a challenging time, or maximum grace for myself. And we ask that our blessings be blessed 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. And we give thanks for this opportunity to be able to come together online from all over the world, to connect, to be inspired, to meet each other. We are so grateful. Aho, Ashe, Amen.
Beloved one, please hold me in your arms, supporting me, 'cause we have traveled so far, earth and star. We are earth and star. We are the one desire unfolding, the one true love evolving, and we have traveled so far, earth and star, we are earth and star, we are. And we feel it deep within, we know it in our hearts. We can bear the pain of separation no more. So come and join us. Here's a taste of what will come when you let go, give in to the one. The Sacred Heart is pulsing, radiant light, revealing, and we have traveled so far, earth and star, we are earth and star, we are. And yes, we feel it deep within, we know it in our hearts. We can bear the pain of separation no more. So come on, come and join us. Here's a taste of what will come when you let go, give in to the one. When you let go, give in to the one. We are earth and star, 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 we are. And we have traveled so far.
And I'm going to gallery view. Let's all twinkle, beloved Omar Shar, for that beautiful opening song. And I love watching everybody dancing and moving. And thank you, Eleanor Joy and Reverend Jeffrey, for always dancing and now bringing in your partners, Ian and Sonia. So we appreciate that. And Roger and Bonnie and Adora. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I so appreciate that. And my co-pilot, Omar Shar, who's always there. I so appreciate you. Thank you.
You too, Scott. It's a mutual admiration society.
I'm going to bring you into the dialogue today, by the way. I think this is, so just be prepared. You're not going to just be playing music. You're going to be chatting with Ia Star and Beth.
Awesome. Looking
because we
forward.
really have, this today's show, we are going to be dialoguing about, some really deep things. We all want to experience greater relationships. I think almost everybody here wants to have a greater connection to, what you might call it, divinity, higher self, Mother Earth. There's 1,000 names. So tonight we're going to be talking about the ways to do that, the ways to move into those higher states of consciousness. And I'm going to start by introducing our newest guest, a new friend, Beth Bell. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you with us. Beth comes highly recommended from mutual friends of mine. And I'm going to share a little bit about her, a bit from her bio, and then we'll get talking. She's a relationship transformer and has chosen to be a spokesperson for psychedelics, bringing her sage wisdom from decades of deep diving into all things spiritual. Beth's life experiences have culminated into a passion for encouraging and empowering others to dive into or to go deeper on their awakening journey. Why? She believes love is the new currency and asks a wonderful question. How rich are you? She also has a wonderful book, which we're going to talk quite a bit about. And it's an interesting title for the book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics. There it is. Well, Beth, it's always share with us a little bit about your journey, because that's always the best place to start. Tell us about this life's journey that's led you to where you are today.
Yeah, well, the subtitle of the book is Unraveling the Mind to Unveil Illusions. And I know that's what this show is all about. So it's wonderful to be here. And we never quite expect our journeys to unfold the way they do. Mine started, I guess when I was born into this lifetime, and I had no idea that I was going to eventually become a psychedelic spokesperson and I guess a herpes spokesperson, if you will, and an angel spokesperson. So if you would have asked me that even 10 years ago, I would have said absolutely not, no way, it's not possible. But Spirit has a plan and we follow our soul's plan. And so that's what I write about in my book. Not so much that I want to tell everybody in the world about all of my stories, as much as it is to connect with people, because we all know, and that's, again, the show is sharing our heart center, sharing our struggles, sharing our successes, and sharing the ascension journey. There's always a nugget in there for someone else, and it's a way that we can connect with each other. So, I like to talk a lot about how everyone on our journey are angels, even though sometimes they feel like devils and they're a thorn in our side. But everyone's here to help us with our awakening. And so in my book, I talk through a lot of those storylines. And I would say that I always felt very awake as a young person. And what happened for me is I got married and checked all the boxes that I thought I was supposed to do in this third dimensional reality. Got married, had a big corporate job, worked in big pharma. And before everybody gets too crazy about that, it's an interesting dichotomy. I'm very happy that I actually had a career in big pharma. I'm very happy I'm not in big pharma. So I have, very different aspects about myself, and got married and thought I was happily married, and then had an awakening kiss at 30,000 feet that just literally woke me up. Every cell in my body just lit up. And I just said, oh my goodness, I'm lying to myself. Not that I knew I was lying to myself, but sometimes we need those wake up moments. And luckily for me, it happened to be something that was a little bit more fun, which is an awakening kiss, as opposed to, a death or a disease or something like that. And then that led me to just go really deeper into this whole soul's journey and really the self-realization journey. And so there's many, many aspects I can get into. I don't know if you want me to sort of just keep rambling on to the whole journey, or if you want to interject with things, but
sure.
I have lots of stories to tell and lots of things that I want to share and that I hope that others will share as well.
Well, yeah, they're all topics that are really fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey of connection to, what do you like to call it? What do you like to call that which is everything in the universe, higher self? What term do you like?
Yeah, I often use universe. I guess these days I speak a lot more about just oneness, because that's really all of our North Star, right? Is to hit that North Star of oneness, but to embody it here and to bring it out into the world and to shine our light and show the way. And so that's, I guess, maybe how I like to talk about it. But we can say universe, we can say higher self. I think they're all great ways to, yeah, to talk about what we're tethered to. I don't know if that's the right word, but tethered to here on planet Earth, in this meat suit that we have, and how we navigate around and help our other brothers and sisters wake up. Right, we can't do it for anyone, and that's also a big theme in the book. Is a lot of times as enlightened beings and as way showers, we want to wake everybody else up. And we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make them drink. And so there's also that time where we say, I'm going to let them choose their free will and let them do their soul's journey. But it's all about getting that ego mind in the backseat and letting the soul drive, as all of your listeners know to this show, right? Because that's what we're all here to do, is to help just remember back to source, remember who we really are at the core. And that requires cutting through a lot of the crap and a lot of the storylines and a lot of the ideas that we have about ourselves and about humanity and about our culture, and all the programs that got instilled and installed in us at a young age, and then all the trauma we endure through all of life's experiences. And I don't say that with a smile to make light of trauma, but we do have to stay light. We do have to stay light about some of the things that happen to us, and just keep asking, what's in this lesson for me? This has happened. What's in it for me? What's the pearl I need to really harvest from this situation? And so, I think, we're all in this journey together. We all have our struggles, and yet we're all ascending. And it's such a beautiful time on the planet, because we really are ascending. And while that ascension is happening, I think probably everybody on this Zoom call has had the moments where you just go, wait, it's like the freak out moment of the darkness or the wound that comes up. And it's also about releasing those and not keeping those storylines as we ascend. And so that we can continue to look at our brothers and sisters out there that are still deep in the third dimensional fear and deep into their thought constructs and deep into the suffering. A lot of people just do not want to release their suffering, right? We know that. So in the book, I talk a lot about those stories, and angels have always been a real guide for me. I would say early on in my life, I was actually really scared about what might walk through my door, or not so much about what would walk through my door, but what would show up in a room. So I always had this affinity towards spirits and probably my star seeds, but I didn't know it at the time. And so I had a lot of fear around actually connecting to the other side. And so eventually, this is like 20 plus years ago, many things happened that kind of started to walk me through. One was where I had 5 people show up in my living room, 5 angels that had very translucent bodies. They were all in flannel shirts and blue jeans. And it was in the middle of my divorce. And I at the time I knew I was really clear about the divorce and leaving, but I also wanted just that guidance for someone to tell me that I was doing the right thing, because it's so hard sometimes when we have to leave relationships because we want to bring them along. And yet, if they're holding us back, we still have to know when to use our discernment to say, no, it's time to keep going. So when these 5 beings showed up in my living room, it absolutely scared everything out of me. But in that moment, I couldn't deny it. And there was really just this big swoosh of energy. And then the message came, you're doing the right thing, keep going. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what I needed to hear from my guides. And so then I went through the whole this is all my imagination and all of that early on in my ascension journey. And then I realized, no, I felt this, I experienced this, I'm connected to this, and I'm going to honor this. And so angels and spirit guides and my starseed family have been something that's guided me a lot. But even with that said, I always come back to, but we always just have to stay right here, right now, in this human body as this character that I chose to play in this lifetime, and bringing all of that knowledge and wisdom through.
Beautiful.
Help everyone else. Yeah.
Let's just take a breath. That was a beautiful big download you just gave us, with probably about a dozen things you said. So, I'd like to comment on that and what about that. So, thank you. I also love to read comments coming in from our presenters, and also want to bring on Eostar. Eleanor Joy writes, such great reminders, Beth, gratitude. And Eleanor Joy also writes, Beth is radiating compassion. And I agree, you're very radiant. Connie, one of our absolute beloveds, writes, yes, Beth, we all gave an overarching act of free will when we incarnated, giving permission to the conscious, loving universe to take us on our journey to wholeness, self-love, self-acceptance, and alignment with our divinity and purpose. George writes, great to be able to hear one's higher self or guides. Dia writes, asking ye shall be given. This, Beth, is beyond my believability. Thank you, Scott, for being the messenger deliverer, gifting us with Beth on this sacred Sunday. Eleanor Joy writes, some of this is new to Ian, her friend. So it's great for someone like him who is beginning on some part of his path. And then finally, Connie had a question for you. And I do want us to answer the question, then I want to bring up Eostar. Connie's asking, was it a literal kiss or a figurative kiss?
Oh, I love that. And this is the juicy part. So I was married at the time, and I had met a gentleman at a Global Institute for Leadership Development conference. And I just had this connection to this person. I did not think it was romantic. I was like, at the time I wasn't speaking in old souls or previous lives or any of that lingo, because I didn't understand it at that point, but I just had this connection, and we just hit it off, and we talked, and I went home and I told my husband all about this great connection that I had with this gentleman. And then fast forward, we had stayed in touch. There were some business things that we thought that we could help each other out with. And we were trying to get together for dinner. And so we were both going to be in San Francisco one weekend on a Saturday. And so we said, yeah, let's do dinner. Well, the very last minute, he wrote and said, hey, I'm going to be coming through New York, because I was living in New Jersey and New York at the time. And he said, do you want to ride with me on my private jet across to San Francisco, and we'll just have more time together? And so I went to my husband and I said, hey, here's the opportunity. How do you feel about it? Are you okay with it? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Go for it. And he wasn't the jealous type. And so I did. I went, I got on the plane, and we got into this incredible discussion about leadership and how we look to hire people. And it was a very 3D conversation discussion, but very much aligned. And then somewhere over, the United States at 30,000 feet, he leaned over and kissed me, which I was not expecting. And that's where everything, so it was a literal kiss, everything lit up. And I just went, oh my goodness. And so by the time we got off the plane, and nothing more happened, I didn't explore that relationship at that time. And we both stayed in our own hotel rooms and all of that. But the beauty of that was that he woke me up.
Wow.
And then I had to go, wait a second. Do I have the relationship and the soul connection that I need, want, and know I can have with this person that I'm married to? And the answer was a clear no. And I was like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? Like, I have to get divorced, right? So it had nothing to do with the person. Of course, it had something to do with the person, because he was physically there and actually kissed me. And then that whole situation. So I went home and ended up saying, I want a divorce. There's a bunch of stories about how that all went down in the book. But it was just such an amazing moment, because that's like my higher self came in, and that was like, boom, the gavel was thrown down. And it was like, I had to follow my truth. I had to follow my heart. And, I feel grateful to this day for that particular angel that came into my life. And I know some people want to judge that as an affair, but I just see it as an absolute awakening kiss. And it was beautiful and something that, changed the trajectory of my life forever. So
I got to say, you lucked out, because we do have these things that come along that wake us up, and it better a kiss at 30,000 feet than breast cancer, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Or the death of your husband or whatever. So, wow. Well, we're gonna have more Beth in a bit, but I definitely want to bring on our other wonderful guest, and she's somebody I just love. You've seen her on Saturday Night Live for the Global Peace Tribe, playing with her partner Matthias. She's an amazing musical artist, but she also is a way shower, and definitely somebody that I wanted to bring back. Eostar Kamala is who you're looking at, and she's a devotional singer, visionary artist, sound healer, integrative healer, yoga instructor, theta healer, and psychedelic integration and preparation coach, psychedelic microdosing coach. Oh, and also a certified breathwork facilitator. She's been leading sacred transformational events all over with healing music, art, shamanic practices, shadow work for over a decade. And she draws her inspirations from various spiritual traditions around the world, synthesizing and merging the best of East and West into what she calls the life-giving path. So welcome, Ia Starts. Beautiful to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me back, Scott.
You know, I think where I want to start in our conversation is your roots. You know, a lot of us are very aware now of epigenetics, and your roots are Eastern Europe, and very different cultural background than Northern California. Tell us a little bit about your journey, your journey, and how your epigenetics kind of dance with the incredible new thought world that you are such a big part of.
Thank you for asking me that question. I was actually thinking back of my my past and my roots while listening, because really each and every one of us has such a unique life path, right? And we are all different, and the path is always so sacred. And where we come from, I am one of those people who believes that it's not an accident, that we choose very consciously and with our guides where we are going to be born into. So yes, sometimes I think about, okay, why did I choose to be born into Hungary, of all places? And I've been living in the United States for 24 years now. So it's been a bit of a stretch, but I was 28 when I left. So I still haven't lived in the United States as long as I have lived in the old world. I guess I'm not fully 100% Americanized yet. So as far as the Hungarian roots, so yeah, looking at it from the perspective of before this lifetime, of course, the question arises, why Hungary? And I think one of the beauties of being born into Hungary is that I was born into a family where there was no religious dogma at all. So I lived without any kind of spiritual ideas till I was 19, when I met the first guide in the 3D, a naturopath, and who opened things up for me, and I started reading books on spirituality. And so that's really beautiful. It's a beautiful path to not be given any kind of instructions on what spirituality is, or what's beyond the physical, until you're an adult, and then it's up to you to figure that part out. So that's something unique. And you know, Hungary was a communist country when I was born in 1970. And some people were Christians still, especially people in the villages, but in the cities and towns, I lived in a town where there were 200,000 people living. And so most people didn't go to church and kind of have given up on their Christian ideas. And there was just this communist dogma going around, but luckily my parents were not communist. So we just had the big nothing, and we had science, and of course science is a religion in itself, and my parents are scientists. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, well, it's such an interesting juxtaposition to me, and we've never really talked about it before. So, but I've always wondered about that, because it is, what a blessing that you didn't have to go through being a recovering Catholic. Right. And because that's the thing, one of the things that is so sad that I've observed is a lot of people that did grow up with dogma, understandably, they become intelligent enough to rebel against the dogma. And if they're fortunate, they find a spiritual path that works for them. But a lot of the time, there then just becomes this absolute rejection of anything spiritual, anything religious, because they had such a distasteful experience with whatever dogma they grew up with. And especially men, to be honest, women tend to find a spiritual path no matter what their background was. But there's a lot of men that I've worked with that anything New Age, anything spiritual, anything religion, all gets lumped into dogma that's bullshit. And then as they get older and closer to death, or life's challenges take place, they don't have that faith to draw upon. They don't have that oneness, as Beth used, or their higher self, or whatever it might be. And it is so important, I've learned, as I work with people in crisis all day long, to have faith, to have a practice, to have ways to see the bigger picture. So what are some of the ways you personally have discovered that have supported you with the bigger picture?
Well, the
That's a
list is
question.
really
That's a
too
question.
long to be able to. But it's interesting, as you were reading my biography, I was thinking there's one thing that's a really big title that I don't usually put into my biography. And that is that I work with sacred plant medicines. And out of all the sacred plant medicines, my strongest connection is ayahuasca. And so I could talk forever about ayahuasca, of course, but going back to my roots, so I didn't have a particular religion to get over, and I was very lucky that early on I met healers who worked with both energy practices and herbal remedies, and so I dove into those things first. And then, of course, came the yoga and the yogic teachings, and I'm still very, very much aligned with the ancient teachings of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and the Patanjali Yoga Sutras and all that wisdom that comes to us from 3,000 years ago or earlier. And only then did I get into the sacred plant medicines, and I was already into pranayama, but as of more recently, I'm really into breath work, and I'm also really into microdosing. So now in my own spiritual practice, I like to connect microdosing with breath work and meditation. So I think those three things work like wonder in a bundle, and I would like to bring this to people, and especially nowadays that the mainstream is awakening, and especially here in California, but all over the United States, people are now starting to have access to sacred plant medicines, and they're like, oh, microdosing, I heard about it. So I'd like to be able to be the one who tells them, yes, you can microdose, and there are all these other things you can do while microdosing. You can have a breathwork practice and potentiate your microdosing practice through breathwork. And then you can move into meditation and realize that maybe you don't even need any of the other things that have led you here. And yes, and healing the traumas of the past. So of course, being trauma informed is very, very important, as we see, and people like Dr. Gabor Mate, who are bringing the idea of trauma to the mainstream, and now people are awakening to the fact that, oh, maybe I too have a trauma that needs some healing, and maybe I too have a trauma that I would like to see what it is, and maybe I can release this trauma or heal this trauma or embrace this trauma. So these are the things that I'm working with.
Beautiful. I'm going to bring Beth on as well, because this is where I want us to kind of go into some conversation. And I want us to talk a little bit about the balance of psychedelics and being trauma informed, because that is a really important piece. And honestly, my kiss, if you will, was when I was 16 and I took LSD for the first time. And that's when I woke up. I had an amazing, I was with my best friend, Richard, and we had an out-of-body experience. And we kind of, as Beth talked about, we had that experience of divine remembrance. We remembered that we were multidimensional beings and that this earth life was just a little itty bitty part of who we were in our existence. And it was a blessing. And I'm now 67, so that was, 51 years ago. But it was certainly one of the most significant moments in my life. And I, of course, went through all sorts of exploration of psychedelics. I no longer use psychedelics. The last couple of times I've tried them, it was like my body was like, no, not anymore. But I am very intrigued with microdosing. And actually, I'm going to be working with Eostar and creating my own little pathway that way. That's me. Most of us watching probably have a story like that, a relationship like that. And so I want to open it up to both of you to share some of and most of the people on our show are 50 plus. So as we're in the second half of our life, what are some of the things to consider and some of the things to be sensitive to and aware when it comes to using psychedelics for connecting to oneness, to higher self, to the universe?
Well, if I can jump in, first of all, I want to say to Eostar, thank you. I think what you're doing is amazing. The breath work, the meditation, and microdosing together is like, that just warms my heart, because I've always been a really anti-drug person all my life, not even marijuana. And so when psychedelics came to me, it's a little bit of a long story, and I won't necessarily, because I want to answer the question, but I can get into that story later. It really helped me to embody everything that I thought I knew intellectually. But the key is that you use it to point you back to that North Star, to that remembrance, but that you still do the work here, and that you still blow up the trauma here and release it here, so that you're not just going back out there to escape. Because I feel that if we do that, if we're not doing the integration work, then we're just doing drugs. Mm-hmm. It's about getting the experience. Scott, you just mentioned it's a beautiful example of having an LSD trip a long time ago and still knowing the remembrance that came to you from that trip, right? We can integrate one trip for a lifetime if we wanted. So it's not about, and people get caught up in this idea that, I'll say ayahuasca, but ayahuasca, bufo, mushrooms, they're going to enlighten me, right? Because you go on the trip and you feel enlightened. But no plant-based medicine is going to enlighten you. You're going to do it yourself. That's why it's self-realization. So I guess I would just second what Eostar is talking about. And I know you haven't told us the whole program, but microdosing is a nice way, but it's also, Scott's way is a nice way to just be not on them anymore, right? So it's something that I think we wake up to, but it's not something that we use as a crutch. And I think that's a really important aspect of this, because I could go on for a while. So I'll stop there, but I also want to talk a little bit about what I think can happen for people if you get caught up in the ongoing use of high doses of psychedelics, and what happens to our aura and our brain chemistry and entities and everything that we open ourselves up to, which can be counter to what we're doing on the ascension journey. So I think that there's like a real fair balance on things that should be discussed, could be discussed, will be discussed. So I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm going to pause there. And
thank you. And it's true. First off, everybody is different. Everybody's journey is different. And I have observed many friends over the years that had such a, there's that famous thing, that axiom that people who get hooked on heroin are chasing their first high. Right?
Yeah.
And usually, unless somebody has a bad trip, but usually the first high of any new medicine can be very groundbreaking. It's a whole new experience. It opens up doors. And it's a great way to peek into what's possible. But it is so important for us not to get attached to doing it over and over and over and over, trying to repeat that first peak experience. And it's something we have to be challenged or concerned with. Esther, what are some of your thoughts about that balance?
Well, so I think a big question is, can people get addicted to psychedelics? That's a really good question. And I would argue that it's not possible to get addicted to psychedelics. Can people get addicted psychologically? We know that we can't get addicted physically. Psychologically, are they habit forming? Yes, we do know people who are smoking marijuana all day, right? We all do know people. And then interestingly, if they really want to get off of it, if they really want to, first they need to want to, it seems like they can get off no problem. So, and what is addiction anyways? Turns out that it's not so much the substance that is to blame, but people are coping with pain. So this is their way of coping with the pain. So ultimately, they need help in the form of therapy. So I'm not too worried about people getting hooked on psychedelics. I don't really see it around me. What I do see as a problem is when people use psychedelics in places that are not safe and where there are entities. And of course, this show is titled Aliens, Altered States, Angels. And so, yes, it's good to talk about entities, and people who work with psychedelics hopefully are aware of this, that when you open yourself up, then now you can be, now you're more vulnerable to possession by entities. But it's also a state of mind where the entities can be removed. So if there's professional help that can help you with removing the entities, it's a great opportunity. But if, let's say, you go to a rave and there's no professional help and there's no protection, nobody has thought about protecting the space, and the music is kind of dark and it's not elevating people, but elevating them vibrationally, but more like there's like this lower energy, then yes, entities can be swarming all over the place, and you can easily become a host for a hitchhiker. So that is my main concern, not so much getting addicted to psychedelics, because what we get addicted to are other kind of things that are more connected with dopamine, not so much serotonin. So I would be more concerned about sugar, food addictions, sex addiction, other types of addiction.
Wow, there's, again, both you and Beth, every time you're speaking, there's so many, I mean, this is a whole day long, because there's so many different elements. And yes, thank you for talking about entities. I felt really blessed that my big musical influence when I was a teenager was the band Yes, which is very upbeat, very positive. I later was blessed to meet John Anderson and spend time with him. But a little bit later in my life, I went to a Pink Floyd concert. Now, I really respect Pink Floyd's music. They're brilliant musicians. But I remember it was the Wall concert, and I remember looking around at all these stoned kids getting this incredibly nihilistic message, right? And the message of the Wall was that life sucks, your teachers suck, your parents suck, your relationships are going to suck. and at the end you're just dead. And I remember looking at all these kids, and that's what they were taking in, and it just broke my heart. It was like, oh my God, thank you, John Anderson, for being my influence, and really, in a sense, my religion as a teenager, because so often our music is our religion, for teenagers. And speaking of music, I'm going to bring Omashar in, because I don't know too much about your history, Omashar.
I don't have a history, sorry.
But I'm curious where psychedelics have played a role in your life's journey. What would you be up for sharing?
Well, I was brought up in England and I was encased in England, let's put it that way, with the British stiff upper lip, etc. But what happened in the cricket fields in England was psilocybin mushrooms used to grow every. Can you leave the four of us on the screen? It makes it easier for me to talk.
Okay.
And the psilocybin mushrooms used to grow in the cricket fields around us, and you get all these hippies and people going out and picking these beautiful little things. And then you get the owners of the field, they knew that the season was coming and they get out with their lawnmowers and mow them all down. And so we chased them around. But anyway, it was fun. But my awakening came through psilocybin initially. I had it within me since a child. I was a golden radiant sun. And slowly the Brit, stiff upper lip, everything, kind of like the European thing, just slowly encased me. And I took some psilocybin and it cracked me open into, I am one with everything. I am one with the stars. I am one with the universe. I am one with you and you and you and you and you. And I thought, holy smoke, that is just the other side of the membrane of my brain. And from then I went to New Zealand and stopped doing such things, but it carried with me. And I was in pop rock bands in New Zealand, as I've told many times before. However, there came a moment in my life where I felt that everything I was doing was half empty. All the music was always had some conscious aspect in it, but it became about a relationship breaking up in rock bands. I thought, I don't want to do this ever anymore. And I had an invitation from someone in the States to go to it was an 11/11 gathering in Virginia, to go, a group called Starborn, to go and be their musician. And I only had 3 spiritual songs out of all my rock songs. And I had no money, and I did not know what to do. And I was living on an island called Waiheke Island off the coast of Auckland in New Zealand. And I was on the beach one night, beautiful starry night, and I said, I feel in my heart I've got to just let everything go, sell everything, including my keyboards, and go to the States and follow this path. But I cannot do this. I don't have the courage. So I want to sign now. And I wanted to sign now. And it was funny, I was on the beach, I was listening to Michael Jackson on my headphones. I forget what it was, probably Beat It or something. And but I want shooting stars, but I don't want shooting stars. I want them to go straight up in the air. And if I get this sign, I promise I will let my whole life go. I'll sell everything. I'll go to the States and start a new life. And within a nanosecond, 5 stars went. And this is a story I haven't told anyone before because I don't think anyone will believe me, but whatever, I don't care. It happened. And I went, oh shit. And basically it was what I said, because I knew that I didn't have to, but I'd made a commitment. And so literally I went home and packed all my stuff up and put it on the street and started selling it. And I had these amazing keyboards with me at the time, and Spirit was now guiding me. And I walked into a shop one day, and there was an American keyboard manufacturer CEO doing a tour of Australasia, and he said, "Dude." He didn't say dude, he said, Omashar, sell your gear here because you're going to get nothing for it in the States. When you come to the States, knock on my secretary's door and we'll loan you a keyboard until you can buy your own. And so this is Spirit is going, here it is, here's the next lotus leaf for you to step on, start trusting. And so I went to the States with nothing, just a backpack. I'd sold my stuff, had enough money for the ticket. And I knocked on this guy's door. It was a company called Ensoniq. And he said, yeah, and within 2 days, I had a brand new keyboard. $3,000 20 years ago was a lot. And for a keyboard. And from then, just wrapping up now, I've never advertised, but from then, just by following Spirit and the lotus leaves, let's say, they appear when you take the step. you know what I'm talking about right there. Then I've played my music in 33 countries, and not one bit of advertising, whatever. And I've just met folks like us, like we met Scott. It was just the vibration was right. It's time to join hands and walk forward, because now there's a deep trust, not only of spirit, but of each other. And so that's a little bit.
Thank you. And Eleanor Georges wrote, "I believe you. One day I manifested a triple rainbow, which confirmed a major decision."
Absolutely true.
And your shooting stars was your kiss, right? That
it was my kiss, man. It was
your kiss.
21.
Yeah.
And I was kissed by the light of the stars.
All right. So here, most of us are 50s, maybe even 60s, and we've had these awakening experiences. Star brought up again, very important, trauma-informed, being trauma-informed. And quite often, it's later in life that we become aware of some of the deep trauma, or maybe the epigenetic issues. We now know that before every human being is born, they receive a genetic download of the trauma of their ancestors, going back at least 7 generations. That's been biologically proven. Well, 7 generations adds up to about 335 people. That's a lot of people going back hundreds of years with everything you can imagine: war, famine, rape, murder. So we all have deep stuff inside of us. So question for Beth and Eostar: how do we call upon our angels? How do we call upon loving guides? How do we call upon psychedelics or breath work to work on some of the deeper traumatic issues that are there?
I can jump in here.
Okay.
The question was, how do we call upon our angels, our guides? And I think first thing that comes to mind to share is seeing everyone that's in front of us as an angel or a guide, because every relationship is here for our awakening, and seeing what they're offering us helps us understand a lot of what's going on in our internal world. As we know, the basics, right? Spirituality 101, what's happening outside of us is a reflection of what's happening inside of us. So I think that's the first more grounded way to look at connecting to angels and guides. And I think the other way is to just simply ask for the assistance, right? And that oftentimes can happen through, I like to do remote journaling, where I ask a question to my higher self or my guides or my star seeds or whoever I want to tap in with, but it's ultimately all my higher self, and writing out a question. Just sometimes it's like, why am I feeling sad? Or why do I feel this? Or how can I shift this? Or what's happening here? And just remote writing, just letting the pen write and really get that insight and that information. Because for me, it happens to stop the circuitous loops of thoughts, because I actually kind of get something down on paper. So that's still a bit of a slow way to go, but a good way to go, a really grounded way to go. And then I also think that psychedelics can be a really great way to pop through and to be able to be in contact with your guides. I know when I did ayahuasca the first time, I had just a ton of amazing experiences, but one in particular to guides was I was laying there and I just was, I was just shaking, which might look violent from the outside, but, it just felt so good because I knew that at a cellular level, like I was just shaking out all the trauma, all the, mind viruses, all the things that weren't helping. And I kind of looked up and I saw all my starseed friends, guides standing there, and we were just laughing and having a good time. And they were just kind of flipping me around. It was like I was going through this car wash, which was just a really fun experience, and a fun experience to have with them. So there are those opportunities as well. So I think there's a lot of different things we can do. But one thing I wanted to say in regards to that question, but also sort of as a tag along to what was just talked about, I agree with Eostar that, we can be addicted to donuts, right? It's our association and our affiliation to something. It's nice that a lot of the plant-based medicines and psychedelics do work on the serotonin receptors and not dopamine. So I think that is a big thing, but they also can help with our neuroplasticity. So there's a lot of things that can happen, but I still think that we, to be in touch with ourselves, our own internal compass, our own inner wisdom, which is our guide, it is our source within us, that a lot of that has to do with what Scott, you started with, which is, you know, to have us do touch therapy. I don't know if you said therapy, but touch while we're doing the meditation, because I think what we don't sometimes think about as humans is how important our brain chemistry is in this whole equation. Everyone wants to talk about, I want to talk about oxytocin and everybody else wants to talk about cortisol, right? Everybody wants to talk about the cortisol stress hormone. And it's like, wait a second, they work in tandem. Why aren't we working on, I'm not saying we're not here, I'm just suggesting like, why don't we do this more? Work on the oxytocin, because that's the cuddle hormone. That's the love hormone. That's the oneness hormone. That's what helps us to feel our connection to source and our connection to our inner wisdom and self. So sometimes there's those easy things like touching and really going into that place of not just self-love, but like getting our brain chemistry to work with us as opposed to against us, getting our DMT and our pineal gland clear. And so all of those things help us get in touch with our guides, or ultimately our higher self, and ultimately oneness and you know, our source, who we're really connected to and what we're all part of. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of good things being discussed here. So great questions.
Great, thank you. I actually want to read a couple comments, and then I want to bring on Esther and get her response. But I do want to include our audience, and a lot of wonderful comments. We're not going to have a chance to read all of them. There was a whole series of conversation about age. So yes, we appreciate people of all ages that are watching the show. Connie writes, awakening, not necessarily trauma informed. How about just a star being or an old soul? And I think, Connie, yeah, that's true. And maybe because I'm a coach and my day job is working with people, I find that almost all of us do have issues that as we awaken, come up. And I think I always want to acknowledge that. But I also appreciate people like yourself that are very, very far along the path. Maureen writes, absolutely, Beth. Inner resonance technologies activate our inner programs and chemistry. IRT, that's again, inner resonance technologies, has activated people's DMT to have a similar experience to both ayahuasca for that experience of oneness. And Scotty says, being with all of us takes us there. Melinda writes, it's so sad we have these amazing events and don't tell anyone. I wish conversations about synchronicities and signs were as common as talking about the weather, like the kiss or the stars. And yeah, you know, magical experiences are beautiful. And all of us have had mystical moments, mystical experiences, sometimes with medicine and psychedelics, sometimes without, but it's always something special. Star, back to you. What are some of your thoughts on all the different topics? Where would you like to go next?
Well, as a response to what we have been discussing, the first thing that comes to mind is that we are never not connected. We are always connected, not only to our angels and guides, but to everyone and the whole universe ultimately. So, you know, the question that you asked, how do we get in touch with our angels and guides, was that the question?
Yes.
So that question is asked from the perspective of the individuated unit of consciousness that we believe we are. So the question itself already reflects that, and that's fine, but it's a particular perspective. So I would maybe suggest that we remove ourselves from that perspective of the individuated unit of consciousness that we each are and move into the source consciousness perspective. And from that perspective, everything is connected because everything is me. Everything is source. No individuated unit of consciousness is ever not connected to the oneness. The question is, some of these units of consciousness have gone on a journey, and they've gone on a journey of separation, where they no longer are conscious of the fact that they are connected. So what do we do with these travelers, these cosmic travelers who wanted to check out and see what it's like to be on Earth, for example, this amazing playground / school. And what do we do? How can we help these travelers to not get totally lost? Because they are learning so much being on Earth. They believe that they could die. They believe that they could lose each other. So they are desperately trying to hold on to each other. And in that effort of desperately trying to hold on to each other, all kinds of drama happens. So what can we do? Oh, well, we can help them by guiding them through their intuition, for example. We can help them by guiding them through these sacred plant medicines and sacred molecular medicines that can, if they ingest them, they can be put into an altered state of mind, not consciousness. There is no such thing as altered state of consciousness, because consciousness is one. But there's altered states of mind, and source can come and give you suggestions, and you take those in the forms of what we call downloads, right? We probably all experience these either on psychedelics or not on psychedelics, in meditation or not, walking in nature, or journaling, or what Beth suggested, some type of journaling where you're channeling. So again, I think it's very important to shift our consciousness out of the individuated human unit out to source, and see that in truth everything is always connected, and we are never not alone, and we just need to back in the individual point of consciousness, we just need to be open to these amplified moments of amplified connection. Let's call it that way.
Beautiful.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, beautiful. I want to share one thing about oneness, and then Dorina has a wonderful question for both of you. And I've shared this on the show before, but it just is so beautiful to know when people, when you're talking your story about how there really is just the oneness. About the most ancient sacred texts that have survived are the Vedic scriptures, written 7,000 years ago in Sanskrit. And in the Vedic scriptures, a god is called Brahman and is assigned 26 principles. There are 26 principles of Brahman. Fast forward 7,000 years to today, our most modern science, of course, is quantum physics, where we have scientifically proven that there's a unified field of ever-changing molecules. And scientists, from a scientific perspective, have assigned 26 principles to the unified field. And the 26 principles of the unified field perfectly correlate with the 26 definitions or principles of Brahman, written 7,000 years ago. So our most ancient spiritual understanding, our most modern science are saying the exact same thing. They're two different ways of understanding the oneness that is. And then one last thing, when Deepak Chopra was on the show, actually a couple of years ago now, he said that if the average person lives to be about 90 or 95 years old, each of us will share approximately 10,000 molecules with every other being who has ever lived. Think about that. In our lifetime, we'll have shared molecules with Jesus, with Hitler, with Mary Magdalene, with the Buddha, with everybody, right? So there is an incredible oneness, and I just love those. Okay, Dorina has a question. First, she thanks us for the wonderful sharings. And then she says, in the so-called psychedelics Renaissance age, how do we avoid big pharma taking over the plant medicines application and use, and also to experience their amazing medicinal benefits without being mandated to do it only in medical situations, without the ability to have our personal relationship in natural environment, deep inner experience and integration on our own? That's a big question. So I'll let each of you tackle it in whatever way you'd like.
You
Go
want me
ahead,
to
Beth.
Okay. Well, that is probably a whole nother show in and of itself. I actually come from a big pharma background. I will say that. So I think we have to, and I understand all the sentiments, and I'm not disagreeing with any of the questions that I think are being posed at all. I like to look at things optimistically in the sense that I think that what big pharma has the potential to do is normalize, if we want to use that word normal, who knows what that really means. If we want to normalize the narrative around psychedelics and we want to bring them off of the narrative of the war on drugs from the 60s and 70s, I think for most people, third dimensional constructs, FDA, are still very viable sources of information for them, and that it will help shift the narrative around psychedelics. And yes, there's a lot of downsides to it, and taking the molecules and not having the full spectrum and doing this, that, the other, all of those things are lots of discussions we could have. But I do feel that we have an opportunity to break through right now and to bring them more mainstream. And I do think that there's aspects that are just going to be really phenomenal about mental health that's going to come through the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, right now there's, last I checked, there was over 250 like proper companies studying, none of which were the big pharma. And once the big pharma get their hands in, I think that is also bigger part of the question. There'll be some interesting things and dynamics that happen, but I guess my focus is to shine light on how this can be a positive and use our discernment as to where we might be able to stand up for something that we feel, but not to necessarily fight the system, I guess, is the words that come to mind, and to allow the system to help in whatever way that it can. And it might not be the way that we would all want it to be, but I do think it'll help in a positive way shift the narrative. We hope, at least that's my hope. So I do think there's positive and there's negatives to it, and a lot more that could be said, but I think for that, I'll pause.
Okay, thank you. Ian Starr, what are your thoughts?
I just think that nobody can stop the times. Whatever will happen. It probably won't be as bad as the war on drugs. The war on drugs has really limited our access to psychedelics in a way that is really sad. It didn't completely put a limit to it all, but I think that even if psychedelics become more mainstream and maybe you'll be able to buy this in a pharmacy, or it's kind of hard to imagine. But again, I will know what to do when I get there. I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm just going to tap into my intuition and do what feels right in that moment. I think that's my answer.
Yeah, well, it's a good answer. And I guess this might be a chance for you to share a little bit, because you're not big pharma and you are guiding people on how to use microdosing in balance with breath work and all the various amazing things that you have that you work on. So share with us a little bit more about people that are interested. They don't want to do big psychedelic journeys, big ayahuasca journeys, but tell us a little bit more about microdosing.
Yeah, I just recently got into microdosing the last 2 years, but in the last 2 years, I have accumulated quite a bit of knowledge and experience, both personally and working with people. And I just love microdosing because it's a gentle, longer term transformational cauldron. To me, it's similar to ceremonial work in that we are working with the sacred plant medicines, even though some people like to microdose with LSD, and that's fine with me. I don't have any judgment on it. Ultimately, you're working with source consciousness. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it, but I feel like with the sacred plant medicines and mushrooms, we have the added benefit of connecting with a plant spirit or a mushroom spirit, and so it's a transformational cauldron. It's more gentle. It also works better with some people's lifestyles, because maybe some people don't have the weekend off to go and do a 2-day ayahuasca ceremony, or they have children, they can't leave them alone at home. But there's this anecdote of the microdosing mom, at home with the kids. Yes, anybody can do microdosing, because you can find that threshold that is perfect for you, where you may not even feel it. You may not even notice that you have taken a psychedelic of any kind, except you notice that you had a better day. And maybe you want to feel it a little bit. Maybe you find that threshold of perceptibility that is your unique level, and you want to take just a little bit more than that, so that you would actually feel a little bit more open, a little bit more alive, and yes, go through the transformation that this brings. And again, that transformation can be a few different things for different people, and part of it can be working with your trauma. It can come up, but it's not going to be as intense. It's going to be manageable. And of course, just like with anything, microdosing, the process of microdosing can be enhanced. So yes, you can work with a therapist, or you can dive into breath work or yoga or journaling, or do other things that will increase the potential for your awakening, healing, and transformation.
Beautiful. There's in a moment, I'm going to kind of let people know how they can connect with you if they're interested in moving into microdosing. But I do want to share a comment. Terry wrote about how the difference between pharmaceuticals and natural drugs. And way back when I was producing television, I had the amazing honor to do the very last public interview with Timothy Leary before he died. I was working on a show called Strange Universe, and we knew he was dying, and I was able to arrange to do the interview with him. And he was quite funny. He was actually quite entertaining, and I was kind of more serious. And he had brain cancer. And so I asked him very seriously, Timothy, what has the cancer taught you? And he looked at me and said, it taught me what I've always suspected, that illegal drugs are far better than legal drugs. So just bringing in the spirit of Timothy Leary here for a moment. Istar, I'm going to go to your website. And as I go there, I'd love for you to share with people how they can reach you. And because I'm imagining there might be some people there, and Istar is in the Bay Area, and a lot of our friends are in the Bay Area. So her website is her name, Eostar, EOSTAR, eostar.net. And what's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to get more information or get some coaching from you?
Yes, so the different contacts on my website are live, so you can contact me through my website. You will also find my phone number there somewhere.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
So you can text me, you can write me an email, and I do a lot of different things. One of the things that I do is music and sacred music. So I hope if you visit my website and you check out our music, which is me and my partner Matthias Palas, our music together. This is music that will really probably elevate your frequency listening to it. Music is such a way to elevate frequency or change frequency. It can go either this way or that way. Ours we definitely, our intention is always to elevate the frequency and bring in the sacred. And you can find out about my various services, and one of them is that I started a microdosing Zoom call. It's Tuesdays 7 to 9. Hopefully the timing works for people, and I just wanted to make it easy for people, so it's drop-in basis and based on donations, so that more people can access it. And there's not a complicated sign-up process. And I'm just here to help people really use the microdoses, the sacred plant medicines in the most conscious ways, in the most effective ways. And I'm happy to coach people.
Fantastic. Again, that's at eostar.net, and there's so much there, including the music that she does with Matthias. They've been on the shows performing before. They've performed many, many times all over their beautiful music. And eostar, it's always such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for spending some Sunday time with us. And Beth, I'm going to bring you back on, and this is where we get to kind of share with people a little bit about you and what you're doing. And again, you can find all things Beth Bell at her website, which is bethbell.me, bethbell.me. And definitely, I am curious about the book. So always when you go to Beth's email or her website, give your email address so she can stay in touch with you. And Beth, what would you like for me to direct people to as we look at your website here?
Yeah, well, if you want to hit the back bar, it goes back to the main. Well, actually, no, you know what? Sorry. Either way, so this just kind of talks a little bit about the book, and you can, as you just did, get the first 2 chapters free. So that's kind of fun. And then if you. The screen that you were on, there's also an awakening and healing handbook. So don't worry, you don't have to go back to it, but there's so many different things on this website. The Awakening and Healing Handbook takes a lot of the modalities that I talk about in the book to another level and just gives more insights in regards to what they are, because we didn't talk about those today. And so there's a great resource guide, and especially if you have others that maybe are just starting their journey, but you can be well on your journey, and the Awakening Healing Guide is a good one too. I also have on my YouTube at Beth Bell Live, a show that I'm starting that's called Unravel Your Mind. And that's all about talking about our life stories, because I heard one person say on the chat, you read it, and I think it's so important that all of us awakened beings share our stories, and that we help others unravel the mind viruses that are in there, whether it's the trauma or the big T or the little t trauma. And so, yeah, on my show at Beth Bell Live, and you can see all the replays and hear different bits of information there as well. That's a great resource to connect with me. And I guess for your listeners, I can also give out my email, beth@bethbell.me, if there's anything that you want to be in touch with me on. But there's lots of books and reference material on bethbell.me. So yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
of course,
here's the YouTube channel. Yeah. I did pull it up while you were talking. We'll go back to the book in a moment, but here is her YouTube channel, and lots going on there, lots of shorts, and lots of videos. So this looks like a wonderful way for people to get to know you more.
Yeah.
Previous life as Lou Gehrig. Wow, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll say that there's also a really fun interview with Louis Schwartzberg on there, and he's one of the catalysts that got me to accept plant-based medicine. So I interviewed him on my show, and he got me interested in the right setting and server. And so that's how I jumped into psychedelics.
Louis is a delight. He's been on the show a couple of times. I host all the films for the Illuminate Film Festival. We just showed his most recent film, Gratitude.
Yeah.
And of course, a few years ago, we had him on the show for Fantastic Fungi.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Beth. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. And I hope you'll come back on the show, and I will be in San Diego in later April. So hopefully I'll get a chance to meet you then.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for having me and introducing me to your community.
Absolutely. Great to have you with us. And of course, we always love to begin and end with Om Shar. And I love that today we got to know a little bit more about your history, bro.
Yeah, I know. As I mentioned, it's the tip
So
of
the
the
mushrooms.
iceberg. Can you? Yeah, I know. Don't. Confucius say, "Do not take this ones." I put them there because they're bright and beautiful and very pretty. But no, don't touch those. Those are Amanita mushrooms. But yeah, it's lovely to share a story. And when I share it, my heart contracts because of the conditioning that people will not listen and will not believe. So that was a nice shattering of that contraction, because I shared something that was very precious to me. It was one of my pearls with people who I know can actually take the pearl and hold it in their own hearts and maybe share some of their story. So this is just a Sunday song. I'm going to put the lyrics in the chat box. Please sing along, muted. Not muted, you don't be muted, but the thing is muted. Now you sing your heart out, and let's go that way. It's a medley of songs. There's 2 songs joined together. There it is in the chat. Please sing along. I'm going to change this. And here we go.
There is only love for you. There is only love for you. In this heart of mine, there's a light that shines with only love for you. There is only love for you. There is only love for you. In this heart of mine, there's a light that shines with only love for you. It's the medley bit. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. Ishkala mahabulela, Ishkala mahabulela, Ishkala mahabulela, Ishkala mahabulela. There is only love for you. There is only love for you. In this heart of mine, there's a light that shines with only love for you. Last time, here we go. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. All I ask of you is forever to remember me as loving you. Ishkala mahabulela, Ishkala mahabulela, Ishkala mahabulela, Ishkala mahabulela.
Thank you so much, Omar Shah. I love that song. It's an oldie but goodie.
I know, right?
One.
It's just they just pop in. It says sing this. I go okay, and
That brings back a lot of memories, that song. A lot of memories. Thank you.
my pleasure.
Hey, I just want to remind everybody about some of what's coming up on Global Peace Drive. Our next show will be on Wednesday night, and it's going to be a really fun one, celebrating our sensuality and sexuality. And I've got a pair of baby boomers, me and Annie Sprinkle. I don't know if any of you know Annie. She is really quite famous in her world. And believe it or not, Annie and I were at the same junior high school class. We both went to Patrick Henry Junior High School way back in 1968, 69, 70. And Annie's had an amazing career. But then to the next generation, Arika Briones, and of course my co-host Trish Wright, who are millennials. So a couple of baby boomers and a couple of millennials talking about how to celebrate our sensuality and our sexuality. That's going to be a really fun show. And then on Saturday night, March 11th, our theme next Saturday night is doing everything with love. And Eden Amadora is my co-host. I love co-hosting with her. And Terry Russo, who's in the house right now, is going to be one of our guests. You know, what's interesting, when Eden and I decided to do the show, I immediately thought of Terry. I thought, let's have someone who's not necessarily an author, but someone who's just a human being who does everything with love. And I immediately thought of Terry. There she is. I'm going to bring her up. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, Terry. I thought of Terry because I know she's a nurse. And, nurses are such an example of people that give so much. And I know that Terry does it with love. So I asked her to be on the show. And then she shared with me that March 11th is her birthday. And I did not know that.
That's funny. I'm laughing. I just got to the yoga studio to do a sound bath. So I kind of moved to the side away from the class. Anyway, nice to see everybody. Thank you for honoring me and all of us. That's so sweet of you. I mean, we have a lot of people that I work with work extremely hard, much harder than me.
Well, I appreciate your humility. And I just appreciate that. What are the chances? 1 in 365 that the day we decided to honor you happens to be your birthday. So that's going to be next Saturday night. Looking forward to seeing you then, Terry.
Thank you.
Have a great
Peace,
sound
everybody.
out. Have a great sound out.
I will. Thank you.
So that's going to be, and we've got, as always, great music lined up. Johanna Beekman and Sherry Howard and Omashar will be with us playing music. And then next Sunday, a week from today, a lot of you are talking about wanting to find your community. And so I've invited Cynthia Tina, who literally wrote the book on finding your community. She travels all over the world exploring different communities.
I'm on the Zoom thing.
She's a delight. And she's going to help us really understand, if you're looking for an intentional community, she's going to make suggestions how to do it. And that's going to be next Sunday. Then the very last thing I just want to share, because it's going to be very special. There's something very powerful going on astrologically. Of course, we're about to have another equinox, but also Pluto is going from Capricorn into Aquarius. It's a very big deal. We talked a little bit about it last night. And so the twin ray, who are, of course, probably two of my favorite human beings of all time, we're going to do an entire show just with the twin ray, helping us to understand what's happening astrologically and energetically at this time in our lives. Now, of course, we will have music with Omashar and Kristen Hoffman, but it's just going to be pure twin ray and music on Saturday night, March 18th. So that's going to be a very powerful show. So please make sure that you plan on joining us live. All right. I will be sending out an email with details about the LA retreat. It is happening. I just am still working on putting it all together, but it is going to be happening. Connie will be there. Connie and Andrew will be there. Maureen will be there. Omashar will be there. I'll be there. Jasmine Bear will be there. And hopefully you'll be there. So we're looking forward to that. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you on Wednesday night. And I'll go to gallery view one more time. And you can all say goodbye.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, Ian Star and Beth. I love you guys. Good to see everybody. Look at everybody coming on.
Thank you, Scott, everyone.
Thank you, George.